Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidates interviews, co-sponsored by the Dane County League of Women Voters. I'm your interviewer, Diane Liebert, and I'd like to introduce Susan Crawford, running for Dane County Circuit Court Judge Branch 1. As we begin, I'd like you to give an opening statement as to your educational, vocational, and civic experience, which qualifies you for this office, and why you're running for Dane County Circuit Court Judge.
Thanks, Diane. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and share my qualifications and my background. I've been practicing as a lawyer in Madison for a little over 20 years. Currently, I'm at the law firm Pine-Spock, and my work is generally in, most often in the Dane County Circuit Court, also in other courts around the state. I do civil cases, generally with some kind of a broad public interest impact. So, for example, I've done a lot of work in voting rights. I've represented Planned Parenthood in a couple of cases to protect women's right to reproductive health care. And I've also represented Madison teachers in the interests of public education in the courts. I also have a deep background in criminal law. I started my career in Wisconsin at the Department of Justice and was the director of the state's criminal appeals unit in that role. So I've handled hundreds of criminal cases and have a lot of knowledge of criminal law and procedure as a result. I also was fortunate to work in several different jobs in the Doyle administration during his 2 terms of office, including working as his chief legal counsel in the governor's office. And in that role, I also handled hearings for applicants for pardons who were seeking the governor's pardon, and that gave me a different perspective on the criminal justice system. I also spent a little time during the Doyle administration at the Department of Corrections, and in addition to working on progressive corrections policy, I had the opportunity to visit many of our state prisons. So I have been behind the walls of many of our prisons and have seen the population there and have an understanding of what the needs are of that population as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Number 1, what do you believe are 1 or 2 personal qualities you have that will be assets to your role as a circuit court judge?
Mm-hmm. In terms of personal qualities, I think the most important quality that a circuit court judge can have is compassion. Just being able to empathize with the people who are appearing in front of you in the courtroom, whether they are criminal defendants, crime victims, witnesses, and even the attorneys who are in court, and being able to make the effort to understand what they are trying to communicate with you, and treating each person with the respect and dignity that all people deserve in the courtroom. So that's one thing. Another thing is that I am a naturally curious person, and I am always trying to get to the truth of the matter, and will do a lot of research and ask questions until I'm satisfied that I have the facts.
Okay, thank you. Number 2, what do you believe is the most urgent issue you will need to address in the administration of justice as a Dane County Circuit Court Judge if you're elected?
Yeah. Well, I think that we have work to do in the Dane County justice system to improve equal justice for all, particularly in issues relating to racial disparities in our justice system. I think that we need to work not just within the court system, but to coordinate across county government to make sure that everyone who is interacting with the criminal justice system is treated fairly and treated equally, regardless of the color of their skin. And regardless of their economic background, too. I think those disparities also extend to people's economic status. So that's a big concern for me, and it's really one of the reasons I'm running.
Okay. In the arena of criminal law, which is the current caseload of that branch, how do you see yourself dealing with the constant issue of working to balance the rights of the accused and the rights of the victims?
Well, turning back to some of the things I just said about the need to treat every person in the courtroom with respect and dignity. I think that often a courtroom feels like a really hostile place to crime victims, and if judges take the time to treat those people with respect and ensure that they have a voice in the courtroom and are treated compassionately, I think that goes a long way. And the same thing for criminal defendants. Defendants who are brought into a courtroom are often treated by judges as if they're not there. And I think that that's wrong, and they needed to be treated as human beings. Often, if they've been convicted, they are there because they committed a wrong and need to be held accountable. But they also are people, and I believe in the powers of rehabilitation and redemption, and each person that walks in the court needs to be treated fairly. So I think there is a balance there to be struck, but I do believe it's possible to treat everybody fairly and have each person walk out of the court feeling that they've had their day in court.
Okay. What do you see are important and innovative ideas for programs to help with the overtaxed criminal justice system and to avoid recidivism by offenders?
Dane County currently has a number of diversion programs, and those are programs that are trying to identify people who have been charged with a crime, who are willing to work on the behaviors that may be underlying their criminal conduct. So, in some cases it's substance abuse. It may be that they could benefit from mental health treatment, and just other kinds of needs. And so, for example, we have a drug court in Dane County, and the whole idea of that is to get a person into programming that helps them to address those underlying needs and allow them to, if they're able to complete those programs, to avoid having a criminal conviction on their record to begin with. And I think those are really important programs because a criminal conviction is itself a kind of penalty that follows somebody for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. We also have first offender programs and restorative justice programs that I think are equally important tools to be used for the appropriate population, the appropriate set of offenders that can take people out of the sort of traditional path through the criminal justice system, and while continuing to hold people accountable and keep our community safe.
Okay. Number 5, what innovative ideas do you believe could be used to assist you as a judge in managing caseloads, working with unrepresented parties and English as a second language speakers, and other procedural issues in your courtroom?
Well, that was a lot of things. I think that one area I see for improvement is just getting judges more data and more information. So, for example, in the area of criminal sentencing, I think that judges need to know more about what is going on in other courtrooms besides their own, and that's just not only the other Dane County courtrooms, but in courtrooms across the state, and also to have a better understanding of what the outcomes are of particular sentences. So, for example, if the level of recidivism, people committing new offenses, is actually less for a shorter sentence than a longer sentence, then why are we using longer sentences? And I don't know that that's true. I'm just using that as an example of how more data, more evidence-based practices, I think, can help in the criminal justice system and other parts of the court as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
How do you see yourself communicating with the community at large as a judge for the entire county, and not just for those in your court?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's important for judges to have a voice and use their voices. I think too many times judges feel that it's inappropriate for them to speak out on issues that our community faces because they feel that it is too political. My view is that judges need to share information with the public and with policymakers as well about what they're seeing in their courtrooms and what the issues and problems are in the justice system, because they have a unique perspective and they really need to share that with the public. So I think both with policymakers such as the Dane County Board and community groups, advocacy groups, through other kind of community organizations, I would really welcome the opportunity as a judge to interact with those groups.
Yeah, thank you. What would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
Well, I guess what I'd like to say is that in the course of my career, I've had many opportunities to go in front of courts, representing often the interests of disadvantaged people, disenfranchised people, and other groups that are in court because they are trying to right a wrong, often against a powerful entity on the other side of the case. Sometimes it's government or maybe a large corporate interest or something like that. And in the work that I've done, I have seen the powers of the court to address abuses of power by those who have the ability to do so, and I'm really committed as a judge to ensuring that the courtroom presents a level playing field, and that the court's in a position to act as a check and balance on the other branches of government. I've been there in the courtroom doing that as an advocate, and I would really like to be on the bench to play that same role as a judge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Susan Crawford for speaking with us, and the viewing audience for taking time to watch Know Your Candidates. As with every election, please vote. On behalf of Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, I want to thank you for joining us.